Very good evening to one and all present, and welcome to a brand new episode of View TV by Vijay Bhumi. We bring to you a fresh episode of our series Express with Ease Students Speak. It's a very unique series that we have curated over View TV by Vijay Bhumi, where we are joined by high school students and we reach out to them and ask them what they feel about contemporary issues. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the biggest global crises we've had in these times. It's really taken the world by storm, which is the Afghanistan crisis that we are going through. There has been, the Taliban has taken over the country completely. They have declared themselves to be the government that's going to be running the country. We've seen the most heartbreaking images from Afghanistan. I think, there's so many images that we have seen in mainstream media around us. Be it in newspapers, be it as WhatsApp forwards, especially the kind of chaos that there is in the country, how people have been running to airports to flee from the country. So many people have lost their lives in that. Also, how desperate the situation has been. There's been so much of a growing concern over, the progress of the state of Afghanistan. So much concern about the safety of women and children. There's been so much international debate about it. Along with it, you have had the withdrawing of the US forces as well. A lot of question marks in the international community, everybody talking about how we should be resolving this issue. If I talk about from an Indian perspective, it can really, it's a very changed scenario for us in India. It's a lot of trouble closer home. What does this mean for us? How is it going to affect our relations with our neighbors? So we're going to be unpacking this and a lot more in my discussion today with the lovely students who have joined me of Rustomjee Cambridge International School. Firstly, at the outset, I would like to thank the coordinator as well as Ms. Tanya Walecha ma'am for helping us facilitate this conversation and having this bright panel set up and organized for us to be conversing with us today. So a huge shout out to the school and a big thank you to them. Joining me on this panel today, I have Ms. Dhyani Soni, I have Mr. Nelson Mehta, and I have Mr. Om Yadav from the Rustomjee Cambridge International School. So thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us today. I'm very excited to be chatting and conversing with you today.
Thank you.
So without further ado, let's jump straight right into this conversation. I am sure that even the viewers who are joining me today, you guys might have a lot of questions. I mean, you might have a lot of comments about, and your views on this issue that has been unfolding before us. So make sure you're writing to us on our social media platforms. You're sending us all those questions to us on our platform. We're going to pick those up and make them a part of the conversation with this bright panel that we have today. So let's begin right with this conversation. I think first things first, what were your initial reactions when you read about this breaking news that, Taliban had taken over Afghanistan? So Nelson, if we could first start with you, what were the first few thoughts that, came across to you and that were running across your mind?
Yeah, so firstly, when I saw the news that the Taliban was taking over, I was actually scared and sad for the people who were stuck over there. Then I saw the rapid rate at which the provinces were being taken. That actually made me angry because I on further research, I found out that the Afghanistan forces were barely fighting and was just surrendering. That actually made me a bit disgusted. This is because on seeing it, I feel that there was so much corruption in the government that the forces were not even fighting and were just surrendering to the Taliban.
I think, Nelson, a lot of us would agree with the fact that, you were filled with frustration and anger when you saw that the government was probably hand in glove in this movement and the way the entire government was taken over. Dhyani, do you have a similar view? What were your initial thoughts when you read about this in the newspaper?
Yes, exactly. Even I felt scared when I heard the news and the images of 20 years before. Like they came beyond my eyes, and then they haunted me in my dreams because this was something which was very scary. And the other thing was I sympathized for the women and children because they were the ones who were harmed most 20 years ago. The other thing that came to my mind was that children are learning that threatening is the only way we can, threatening is the only game win. So that was very disturbing.
I think you've made some very good points there. Definitely the parallels that were drawn to, how the situation was in the country 20 years ago was something that was daunting on everybody. Second, the issue of the safety of women, which is something that we're going to deal with in a little more detail in this conversation a bit later. And the third, I think, which is a very interesting point you made, that what is the kind of example that we're setting in front of the younger generation there. That is, there's clearly that, tyranny is going to win over democracy. There are no sort of democratic ideals, and, using force, use of force, and using violence is something that is acceptable and to usurp power. So Om, those are some very interesting observations from Dhyani. What about you? What were your initial observations when you read about this?
When I first heard about the country being taken over by Taliban, I was like hugely disturbed and shaken, because knowing what they had done like about 2 decades ago, it was really frightening for me. And seeing people really desperate to flee the country, it kind of denoted the fear of the Taliban among the people. So it was really frightening.
I'm sure a lot of people who are attending this conversation will echo that sentiment with you. So now that we have, spoken about our initial reactions, I think the second thing that all of us would be hit with, but that what were your immediate concerns that came to your mind that, probably need to be resolved and spoken about and taken up by the international community? Because, there's so many different issues that are highlighted by a situation of anarchy like this, which has been created in Afghanistan. So Dhyani, what were the immediate concerns that, struck your mind, that's something that needs to be resolved at the earliest by the international community?
So firstly, we cannot evacuate everybody. And that the thing is that safety is the most important thing at this moment. And if you see the news, there 5 people every day are killed because of the stampedes at the airport. There is a huge crowd which causes deaths. And then safety is one thing, as I mentioned. Medical help. If you see the ISIS suicide bombing attacks, right now there are many people who are injured. Even the proper number is not defined, like how many people are injured or killed, because there are just bodies all around the airport. So medical help is should not be stopped, and then the food and the humanitarian efforts should be constantly supplied.
Right. So I think those are some really important concerns you flagged up there. Firstly, I think that state of panic, which has suddenly, led to a situation where everybody wants to evacuate the country, is actually leading to a lot of chaos and leading to a loss of life that needs to be dealt with. Second, most importantly, what you're saying is that, making sure that we have the right medical help. We've all been hearing about, the numerous blasts that have been happening in Afghanistan. So clearly there is a need for medical help to reach there on an ASAP basis. Because right now, obviously, we are not very sure of the authenticity of the information that is being trickling out to us from Afghanistan. And third is to make sure that, we have proper humanitarian aid that is being rolled out by the international organizations in the state of Afghanistan. Om, what about you? Anything more you'd like to add in terms of what are the other concerns that the international community should respond to at the earliest?
So basically, about more than 20 years ago, there were really harsh rules which were mainly targeted towards women of Afghanistan. It was like they weren't allowed to, girls weren't allowed to go to school, or women couldn't go out of their houses without a male relative. And such harsh rules are against basic human rights. And I think the UN should immediately talk about that.
Absolutely. So I think that's a very valid point, which is, gender discrimination, which is something that I think is the fear of many all across. And we see numerous experts talking about it in talk shows as well. I mean, because from that scenario 20 years back, there was some progress that Afghanistan had made. You had some sort of female representation that found its place in the government to ensure that the female voice is being heard. But now, with the taking over back of Afghanistan by Taliban, one cannot be sure that if we're going to turn the clock back and go back to how it was. Nelson, you'd like to add something to this? Something from your end?
Yeah, so I actually want to quote something from the statement of the UN's Human Rights Commissioner. She said that there has been a 50% increase in the number of civilian-related cases from January 1st and June 30 of 2021 when compared to the same time period in 2020. This shows that as the Taliban has slowly taken over, the number of cases against civilians, innocent civilians, have increased. Now, this can be very dangerous and fatal for a civilian if this trend continues. So, this is one very important issue which I find problematic. One more thing which I would like to add to Om's point was that the Human Rights Commissioner also said that there have been credible reports that whatever like Om had said about women not being able to study in universities. This has actually been happened in several provinces, and women have actually been turned away from studying and entering their universities too. Yes.
Right. So thank you for reinforcing the point that Om was trying to make. And second, I also think the point that you're raising about civilian lives being at stake and how, their safety is going to be, probably more compromised with the Taliban taking over is something that is definitely very worrying for all of us. Dhyani, you've raised your hand. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I actually missed a point earlier. I was going to talk about that 46% of the population is below the poverty line. And when they heard the news, they had abandoned their houses and had rushed to the airport, but they unfortunately couldn't evacuate those people. So now they're living in parks and open spaces. So they should be rescued from there like immediately. That's like one of their priorities.
Absolutely. So you're saying the rising issue of homelessness, which has arisen because of, the state of chaos, is something that needs to be addressed at the earliest. I think that's a point very well taken. Now, while we're talking about the Afghanistan issue, I think a lot has been said, a lot has been written about, there has been backlash, there have been a lot of opinions that have been exchanged on Twitter about the Biden government's move to pull out, the US forces. So what is your take on it? What does the student community feel? That do you support the move of the United States of America to pull out their forces from Afghanistan? Because for a lot, this is really the reason that has, opened this Pandora's box for, the world and especially for their citizens to deal with. Om, if we could hear from you first.
Yeah, so seeing that US and Afghanistan have been allies for more than 20 years to fight and eradicate terrorism, seeing US withdrawing its troop right now, it seems like they have withdrawn themselves from the morale they once used to stand for. And looking at it from the perspective of the US, thousands of US soldiers have died in Afghanistan. And I think that the Afghan army are more than in number than the Taliban and must be better equipped too. And seeing them surrender as soon as the Taliban had arrived, it seems rather really cowardly, if I may say. And that is another way to approach it.
Correct. So I totally agree with your point of view there. Dhyani, would you like to concur or add something, or probably you want to differentiate your point of view from Om's?
Yeah, I have similar opinions that it was cowardly to just surrender because, and even when the U.S. Military was supporting the Afghanistan military, that time they did not. They just resisted the Taliban. They never captured them or made them surrender, which was something wrong. And the other thing was it's somewhere there is it's Afghanistan army's fault as well because of these reasons, and America had their own reasons that there were several attacks on them because of the Taliban had attacked them. So it is correct that they should withdraw their troops to just end the war.
Correct. So, Nelson, let me come to you. I mean, we have spoken about the problems, but let us talk about, what are the sort of measures, what are the expectations of, how do we resolve this situation? how should the international community, supported by the international organizations, come together to actually tackle this ongoing crisis?
Right now, I believe that the situation is very volatile, and that I believe that making any concrete decisions right now might actually backfire. So I believe that we should wait for the situation to simmer down. Then we should find out ways to change the government. I believe that we can do that by supporting the resistance which is there in Panjshir. I believe that supporting them by humanitarian aid and also funding their military, we can use that to help change the government into a more democratic form. Furthermore, I also believe that we should also start boycotting the Taliban government and also start economic sanctions. This can help create give leverage to the remainder of the world and help create better human rights for the civilians and also for women, and help create a better life for everyone.
All right. So if I get that correctly, you're saying first we must wait and watch and just let things unfold. Second, we must support the larger population in ensuring that through fair and democratic means, you have a better government that is actually elected and brought to power. And third is that, to sort of cut off the resource available to the Taliban government that has just taken over, we should impose economic sanctions. What about Dhyani and Om? Do you agree with that? Would you like to add something in terms of, any other steps that the international community as a whole can take to, help Afghanistan and its population get out of this crisis? I think, Om, you're raising your hand, so if we may hear from you.
Yeah, so after the situation unfolds, obviously, I think the UN should keep a close watch on the country, because as one knows, the Taliban can show something to the world, and on the local level, on every street of Afghanistan, there may be something else happening. For example, women not having their rights of basic rights of going to school and education. So one must ensure that everyone has their rights met.
Correct. So you're saying that basically the United Nations and its other agencies must keep a very close watch on what is happening on the domestic affairs of the country, because there can be misrepresentation of an image before the media and the world, which can be misleading. Point very well taken. Dhyani, would you want to contribute to this?
Yeah, I completely agree with both of them, and I would like to add on to Om's point that when some women were interviewed, they said that some people working, women working in bank, they were asked to leave the bank so that their men relatives could take over. And on Tuesday, one spokesperson from Taliban said that women will be allowed to work, and they will be given some rights, but within the limits of the law. So it's completely correct that they may be something else to the world, but locally it's a different story. And also, there should be continuous dialogues between Taliban and the international community, so they exactly know what's happening, and they don't go to go in the wrong path.
Correct. So I think you're right when you say that, I think what is key here is the fact that rather than taking a very aggressive stand, what's important is we need to keep our negotiations and dialogue open so that we have access to the key persons who are taking decisions there, and, there are, proper aid can be given. And obviously, I think a lot of people attending here would resonate with your views that, if this is something where the community has to step up at large, which is to making sure that we have a hawk's eye view on what is happening within the country to avoid any violation of civil rights and gender discrimination. So now that, we have spoken about what possibly the international community can do, if I had to ask you, what are the kind of changes do you think that this crisis is going to have on the geopolitical scenario of the world? How is this going to change the power dynamics that we see, existing in world politics today? Do you think it's going to have some sort of ramification? Are we looking at some changes? How is all of this going to pan out? I'd like to open this to my panel, whichever one of you wants to take this question first.
Can I?
Sure, Nelson, feel free.
Yeah, so Afghanistan is in a very strategic position in Central Asia. It allows trade to happen inside Central Asia and allows also India to circumvent Pakistan and help trade in Central Asia, which is extremely energy rich. Which I believe that the strategic position of Afghanistan is key to be held by someone which would be beneficial for the entire world. So that is why I believe that that is one important point for Afghanistan. Secondly, Afghanistan has over $1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals. I believe that this now, due to the shortage of rare earth minerals, I believe that giving this to Taliban gives them a certain amount of leverage, as they can start by saying that they would reduce the supply of the rare earth minerals. You can also see that China has started strengthening their ties with the Taliban in order to access this rare earth minerals. That is why I believe that the Taliban is very important, not only from an economic sense, but also from a geographic sense. Thank you.
That's a good point, that you're saying in terms of their geographic location and how resource rich they are, and the fact that now Taliban is going to be controlling it, there is going to be a power shift in the dynamics that we see in the nation today. Dhyani, you're raising your hand. What would you like to add to this question?
Yeah, so in Afghanistan, the main occupation they have is agriculture, and if we see, then a lot of dry fruits and hing, I suppose, it's transported to India. If I look at India only, then it's a lot of it is transported to India, and similarly, India transports it. So the economy of both the nations is related to each other. If we and now if these Taliban say that they will stop or reduce the supply to India, the prices are already increasing. First of all, in India, the prices of dry fruits. So then they can just threaten or blackmail that just give us more money, then we'll transport the goods to you. So that's one concern.
Thank you so much, Dhyani, because you have set the context for my next question. So while we've spoken about how this is going to pan out in world politics, this is a problem that is brewing in our neighborhood, as our country is right in the middle of this. Nelson has pointed out that China is now looking to strengthen its ties with Afghanistan. Suddenly, we have been seeing news reports. Don't know if this can be verified or not. That suddenly the Pakistan Taliban has become very active. So India really seems to be in the center of all of this. So what are the sort of issues you think India is going to face? What are the major concerns that we're going to face as a nation, and how we should kind of emerge out of it? Because I feel like we are really going to be stuck in between the crossfire of this entire global crisis that is unfolding for everyone today. Om, if you would like to take this question first.
Seeing the current situation of India, we have noticed that there have been some riots going on in front of the UN Geneva offices in Delhi. And this may have caused unrest in the country, because this may spread across the nation, and which might be really a huge change in many people's day-to-day lives and may cause problems.
So you think that, this is a sign of them trying to cause internal unrest within the nation, and how this can generally put us in a state of unrest. Nelson, Dhyani, what about you guys? What are the potential issues that you see, that apart from, the Dhyani flagging of that, there are economic relations which are now going to be compromised? What are the larger issues that you think as a country we're going to be facing by, this sudden change of events in Afghanistan?
So it was reported that whenever there was a Taliban controlled Afghanistan, it has always led to problems in Kashmir, because it was reported in this way, and there were no evidences given, but this was mentioned once. And also,
Right. So you think that? Go on. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, and also adding to Om's point, refugees that are evacuated from Afghanistan have started riots in Delhi because they wanted to be evacuated to US and Canada because they find more opportunities there. Uh, so this is going to be a little problem for India.
So you think the refugee crisis is something that is going to affect India, and second, you think that it can definitely lead to potential unrest in Kashmir, which is something that we need to be aware of and be cautious of. Nelson, what do you think? I mean, this is a very interesting point that has been brought to the forefront, which is the refugee crisis. Do you think that as a nation, should we support the movement of refugees from Afghanistan into our country? What should our stance be on it?
Yes, I believe that we should get refugees inside because let's look at it from an economic point of view. These refugees are mostly skilled. For example, they have worked with US, NATO, and this can help our economy too. So I believe that that's one important point from an economic point of view. Secondly, these people have been the people who have helped us. Afghanistan and India have usually had, prior to this point, Afghanistan and India have had a very strong relationship. So I believe that in the future, if there's a democratic government reforming, then I believe that if these people migrate back, I think that that as India accepted the refugees, this would be a good and would show that India has always supported the democratic part of Afghanistan. I would also like to add that the ruling government of Pakistan, the PTI, one of their members has said that the Taliban will help destabilize Pakistan. This is a bit of the previous point, but I believe that this is extremely concerning for us because they're saying that they'll help destabilize India and help take back Kashmir, which I believe can be very dangerous and just shows the extent to which the Taliban might help Pakistan. Also, I would like to talk that the Taliban have known India's red lines. They know where India draws the line. So they can start acting between these lines and inside these lines and start damaging India, but not to the extent where the Indian government would take a massive full-scale action. Yes.
Right. So I think, firstly, I'm glad to know that you're supportive of the move that we should welcome refugees within our country, especially because some of them have worked with the embassies earlier and they can add to the skilled population of our country today. The second, you think that I totally agree with you that it's a good move for us to portray in the international arena that we are welcoming refugees. I mean, obviously we have a booming population of our own, so maybe we can adopt a stance where we can adopt a minimum number that these are the number of refugees that we'll be welcoming from Afghanistan, keeping in mind the situation of our country. Third, definitely, I think this is something that is the concern for a lot of people. A lot of people have been writing about it, that how this can lead to a lot of unrest in Kashmir. And fourth is how Pakistan can actually how Pakistan can be used as a pawn by the Taliban, how Taliban can strengthen Pakistan, and that can cause further issues for Kashmir as well as for issues in Kashmir as well as issues largely for the country today. So while we've been discussing all of this, I think one issue that we've all been sort of skirting about and talking about in various of our responses has been about the issue of women, and how a lot of us fear that this is going to be turning back the clock in a lot of ways for Afghanistan and the Afghani women, and we fear for their safety, we fear for their progress, we fear for their education. What is it that we can do to support them at this point of time? I mean, is there anything that the countries and the international agencies can do to sort of ensure that we empower them in the right way so that they are not facing the wrath of the Taliban? So it's a question open to this panel. Whoever would like to take this first.
I think the way we will the international community and UN other organizations will handle other problems. I think closely monitoring them and pressurizing them to not take a wrong step would be the best at this point, because as I mentioned before, they show something else to the world, but internally there are some problems. So I think closely monitoring them would be the best option at this point.
So I think closely monitoring and dialogue is a solution that you offer, that is something that we should be doing. Anything coming from Nelson and Om on this issue?
I think that all we can do right now is that we should all, like the power of media, we should spread awareness through social media and run campaigns so that they have no option rather than like doing what they do. Instead of doing that, they should listen to our voices and give women their own rights, which are equal to men.
Right. So you think that, we should have ample movements on social media and mainstream media so that we can make the Taliban mindful about that gone are the days when the women folk were isolated and alone in their country, but now there's an entire world with the power of media that is supporting them. Point very well taken. Now, I see we're running out of time already, but before I end this conversation today, I think one question that, is something that's coming across on most of our social media platforms that I would like to take up with you, which is this, that is this an opinion that you agree with, that the fact that now Taliban has taken over, the way the takeover happened, the way the Afghani army surrendered, the way the officials surrendered, do you think the Afghani Taliban is stronger than ever, and that's going to pose a threat to world peace? Is that the signal that you receive, or is that your interpretation of the way things have unfolded? Again, an open question to the panel, whoever would like to take it.
Yeah. So I think that Afghanistan, the Taliban right now is more powerful than it was in the 1990s, because this time all of US's equipment has been left over there. So I have read that over $85 billion worth of equipment, including 75,000 vehicles, have been left to the Taliban. Now I understand that it would be more expensive to transport these back to the US, and that was left for Afghanistan to the Afghanistan National Army to fight against the Taliban. But due to the corruption in the governors and the officials, it has been shown that this all has just been left to the Taliban, and now they're stronger. And I've also read that the Panjshir resistance has only 6,000 troops, which has been massively been which has been extremely low compared to that of the Taliban, which shows that the Taliban are extremely strong, and if they're left unchecked, they might be able to strengthen their hold over Afghanistan. So I believe that yeah.
So I think that's a very good point and a good observation. I mean, this is something that a lot of people have been, raising their doubts about, the fact that, this material and this equipment and these weapons have fallen into wrong hands, and how this can actually wreak havoc for the country. Dhyani, I see your hand is raised up. What would you like to add to it?
Yeah, even I read about the same thing, and they have like 200 helicopters and sophisticated equipment. They also have night goggles, so like they can now attack at any point or just harm people whenever they want. They also have biometric devices, which has the information of the people who worked earlier with the U.S. government, and they are searching for them and just going and killing. So they are showing that they have become more powerful than 20 years ago.
So you think that with them adopting all this new age technology and the kind of weapons that they've access to, that has definitely strengthened their position, and they are, coming back at people with vengeance, where there is targeted killings that are going on of officials citizens who have helped the embassies earlier. Om, concluding remarks from you. I see your hand up.
Yeah, so on an international scale, this can be dangerous because such ideologies of taking over a country can spread like wildfire. And as we know about the Kashmir situation, it's quite certain many more countries may end up like Afghanistan.
Absolutely. I think, these are some very well made points, guys, that all of you have made. Definitely, a lot of the concerns that you guys have raised today, that you've brought to the forefront, are concerns that everybody's talking about in the international arena. Some very good solutions have come from all of you. I think largely we all, agree with the point of view that the international community, supported by the international agencies, have to come together as a united front to tackle and support the citizens of Afghanistan and help them get out of this crisis. Third, where most importantly, we cannot break conversation with Taliban. There has to be continuing dialogue. Wherever necessary, there have to be interventions by the world governments to ensure that civil rights are ensured and that safety of women, children, and other and the citizens of Afghanistan is ensured. I definitely think we've had a very good conversation today with some very important issues being highlighted in the forefront. I would like to thank each of you for taking out the time and joining us today and sharing your point of view, your perspective, and your concerns with us. I think this is definitely going to start a very healthy conversation around this. And the idea is that, as many healthy conversations that we are going to have about, these issues is what is going to bring us closer to the solution and is also going to give the necessary support to the Afghanistan population to let them know that we're all with them. And this is going to be different from how it was 20 years ago. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being a wonderful panel and being a very responsive panel. And a huge thank you again to the school for facilitating this. A big thank you to all our audience for joining us, for sending us your questions. It is your constant encouragement and motivation that keeps us going and inspires us to bring content to you on a weekly basis. So thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much to our audience. We'll see you again on next Saturday at 5 p.m. Until then, mask up everybody and stay safe.